Okay, we're live. Great. Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Jim Daly, and we're here again this month for our monthly training with some of our employees. Some of them are out today, and some are still coming. As it turns out, one of our employees, our shipper, has a new granddaughter, and she was out today because of that reason. So that's always a nice event, although it may delay your shipping a bit. Didn't all get done today, so if your package that you ordered today doesn't get here quite as quickly as you thought, well, it's because it didn't get shipped. We have people filling in that aren't quite as used to shipping, so we don't want to hurry them much because we don't make mistakes on the orders either. So, but anyway, what I'm talking about today is China. I just made a trip to China, and I went there specifically to visit companies and go to a trade show, because the reality is that most of the ingredients that go into dietary supplements come from China. You know, even if American companies like ours are making the final product, nearly all of them do come from China. And we frequently have customers asking about that and concerned about that issue. They'll call us up and ask, do you get your ingredients from China? Well, we could truthfully say, if we wanted to, that we buy most of our ingredients from American companies. However, that would be misleading, because those American companies are buying their ingredients that they're selling to us from China and occasionally India, and occasionally a European country or Israel or someplace. But, you know, probably 80% of all the nutraceutical ingredients come from China, at least, if not more. So the reason in the past I have mostly brought from American companies these ingredients, because a lot of them have good connections, companies that they know and trust, and I feel like I can sort of rely a little bit on them to help get the good quality ingredients to bring in. And of course we have to test them and make sure, but testing can be tricky too at times. But still, consumers in the U.S. worry about the quality of Chinese products, and so do actually Chinese consumers. There's been a few incidences that have made Chinese consumers worry about Chinese quality as well. And one of the big ones, probably, well, for sure the biggest one, was the melamine in milk scandal a few years ago that happened in China. In 2008, there was a major scandal in China. It had a very large and long-lasting effect on the reputation of food manufacturers in China, actually. Of an estimated 300,000 victims in China, 6 babies died from kidney stones or other kidney damage, and an estimated 54,000 babies were hospitalized. That's just a huge disaster. It turned out that the problem was putting melamine in the milk. Now, melamine is not really particularly toxic. That wasn't the issue. Melamine, however, if you look at that molecule, see all the ends on it? Those are nitrogens. The way you normally test food for protein content is you measure the nitrogen in it. Proteins run about 16% nitrogen. So if you take the milligrams, say you have 100 milligrams of nitrogen in a food sample. Well, you multiply that by 6.25 and you get 625 milligrams of protein. Pretty simple, except that they were adding melamine to a diluted down milk. Now look at all those nitrogens. If this were an amino acid, and it's about the same size as an amino acid, really, a lot of them, it would have one nitrogen there. This thing has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nitrogens. So it looked like it has about 6 times as much protein as it would have, really would have. if it were all the nitrogens were from protein. So you can see that what was actually happening to these babies is they were essentially dying from protein malnutrition. They weren't getting it in the milk. A number of 11 countries stopped all imports of Chinese dairy products after that, and there were a number of criminal prosecutions in China by the Chinese government. 2 people were actually executed by the Chinese government over this. Another one was given a suspended death penalty. 3 people received life imprisonment, and 2 received 15-year jail terms. And 7 local government officials, as well as the director of the Administration of Quality and Supervision and Inspection and Quarantine, were fired or forced to resign. So it really had a big impact on the industry, but also on the reputation of China. Something that everyone in the world just about knew about. So it's important that we be able to address people's concerns about the quality of our ingredients. So, because they're aware of this just like, we are. Also, though, one thing that this sort of points out too as well is that you have to be careful with assays sometimes. You still have to ask yourself, because sometimes people will try to do that too. I think right around there was an article. First thing I did was, as soon as our factory opened, I was here. I was calling up our John's Ward. Knew after that hit the. I was right on that one. Much as and they before the day was over. Well, not surprisingly, there's always going to be something. What happened is people were taking herbs that were not St. John's wort, and a lot of times we didn't even know what it was. Some of them we think were papaya leaves, some alfalfa. Taking a chemical comparison, which is what people assayed for in St. John's wort, is standardized usually for the hypericin content. So they mixed chemical-made hypericin in it, and then they sent it to the companies that it assayed if it has what's supposed to in it. Well, the problem with that is you might say, well, what's wrong with that? They're still getting the active component, right? Not really, because hypericin is a marker compound for the strength of the extract, but it is not the active compound. Nobody knows really what it is. The German Commission E for herbal extract standards use that as a marker to see how strong your extract is when you followed a certain extraction procedure. But it did not ever intend that it be considered the active compound. In fact, when you give just straight hypericin to somebody, it has really no effect. Hyperforin might be another one that's beneficial, but even itself, there's very little effect. But the standardized extract made by the procedures outlined in the monographs of the German Commission E is effective. So there's other things in there too that we don't know what are. However, the people who were buying the St. John's wort, supposedly St. John's wort, that were testing out okay, were not getting an effective product. And that kind of thing can happen in the industry, and does happen in the industry. So we have to be careful. And So that's one of the reasons why we have to really look carefully at our assays, but we also need to really look carefully at the companies we deal with and know that they are reliable on entities. I get emails all the time, I mean, several a day, and they've got the cheapest this ingredient or they've got the best price on this ingredient. It's a continual barrage of companies trying to sell me the. We try to make premium products. We're interested in the cheapest ingredient, honestly, and do what we. However, over time, that there's a lot of good Chinese companies out there, and I'm sure there's some that aren't so good. In China, and it's just huge. There's bound to be some bad apples in that basket, so to speak. So we know that there's a lot of good Chinese companies, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we also know that we need to be careful with Chinese companies, with American companies, with European companies, anybody. We have to be able to, you know, have a well-founded basis for trust in that company, and we still have to test to make sure that what we're getting is what it should be. Now, I just took one page of vitamins out of one of our suppliers' catalog, and these are vitamins, and just so you can kind of see, this tells what they are and where they come from, and the grades and things like that. But you look down through there, you see China, 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 China. You see a little bit from India. You see one product there from the USA, a vitamin A palmitate. You see one product from Japan. But all niacinamides, the niacins are coming from India, from their company. Everything else is from China. So, you know, basically what we are saying is we have to deal with China. If we're going to have nutritional supplements, the ingredients are right now are going to come from China, very many of them. About the only thing we really get from the USA is minerals. We can get American-made minerals in the United States. Everything else is pretty much Chinese, with a few from India or elsewhere. And, you know, I'm not particularly happy, honestly, with some of the American mineral suppliers either. So, because what they're, you know, they're doing some things that I don't like. It's a common practice and really accepted that if you have a calcium citrate, a lot of them do what they call a dry reaction, which is basically a non-reaction. They just take calcium carbonate and citric acid, mix it, blend the two together, and they say, well, when it hits your stomach, it's going to make calcium citrate. Well, that's not what calcium citrate should be. The chemical name for it, it should be a covalently bound citrate with calcium. So that's something I'm looking really hard at my American suppliers right now for, because this is a common practice, and I really think it's unethical, to be honest. It's seems to be a well-accepted practice by a lot of people, and companies that you would say are probably good companies, but I don't think it's one that I find acceptable, let me put it that way. So I'm really starting to take a close look at that with some of these companies and how they're doing it, and trying to really pin them down on this. How do you make this product? Because they're sort of cagey about it. They don't always want to tell you if they're doing it that way. So why go to China? Well, it's not to find cheaper products. I can find all the cheap products I want to. They're bombarding me from all over the place every day. People from the U.S. that are buying them from China, people directly from China. You know, I can find cheap products, but I go to China because I'm wanting to find out who is there that I can really develop a relationship, know that I can trust them, still verify that what I'm getting is good, but know that they're at least making an effort to be a good company that supplies good ingredients. That's what I expect. I know that sometimes they may mess up, label something wrong or something like that. That happens, but they need to own up to it and make it good, and we need to check and make sure they're doing it right. So I need to know, who in China I can really develop some confidence in and know that what I'm getting is right. And it's not an easy process, and I'm just really getting started at it, actually. It's going to take time to develop that kind of information. But my son and daughter and I flew into Shanghai. It's a very modern city. It has the second tallest building in the world from what the people there told me. The one in Dubai is now taller, but it's Shanghai World Financial Center. It's over kind of on the right-hand side. You see a building disappearing into the clouds. Well, that's it, and it goes on up ways. We attended a CPHI show that included pharmaceutical, nutraceutical ingredients, as well as machinery, as well as lab equipment. It's a huge show, very, very big. A lot bigger than any show I'd been to in the United States. Like I said, we're not there to find cheaper products, but we're beginning to realize that, at least for now, we have to buy Chinese ingredients. Now, I hope someday we start making more ingredients here, to be honest. I'd like to see that trend reverse a little bit. But, the reality is right now, if we want to make nutraceutical products, we're going to have to get Chinese products because there's no other option. There used to be a company in Wilmington right here in North Carolina making vitamin C. And we used to buy it from them, but they went out of business about 15 years ago because, they just couldn't compete, essentially. So, and that's happened all across the industry. So, but soon we're being exposed to a different culture, and I'll talk a little bit about business here and a little bit about just China, maybe. We would never have noodle soup with mushrooms for breakfast here, but in China we found it, we did, and we liked it. They have a different idea about breakfast food than we do, but it was actually quite good, so that's okay. It was kind of fun. The food was fun, and even though communication was challenging, we managed to find vegetarian foods to eat pretty consistently. And I won't say that it's easy to be a vegetarian in China, but it is possible. So, you can find what you need there. And now you have these little things like Google Translate things that it'll show you them in Chinese. You can hold it up for them to read it. And, you just find ways of getting around the communication barriers. Sometimes you can draw pictures, but, whatever. You always hear about air pollution in China, and we did see some of that, but it's not so bad. We were there in the rainy season, so perhaps the air quality was better while we were there than it normally is. But I wasn't feeling I was very affected by air pollution anyway. But the rain, of course, will clear the air out. I'm sure there's times when it's much worse than what we experienced. The people were extremely nice and very, very friendly and helpful. That's one thing I really did like about China was the people there. And the example, in the hotel we were staying in Shanghai, we were wanting to mail a box back to the USA. So we were asking the concierge there about, where, we asked the day before where the post office was, and they drew on a map where it was. And, I went up looking for it, and I couldn't find it. It was only maybe a quarter of a mile straight down the street from the hotel, but of course nothing was written in English on the buildings, or some were, but not the post office. And so the concierge was saying, well, even if you do find the post office, nobody's there who's going to speak English. So how are you going to communicate to them to get this package shipped? I don't know, we'll figure it out, like that. And he says, fine. I said, hold on just a minute. Call somebody over there. I'm going with you. So we both walked down to the post office. It took about 10 minutes to walk there. He stayed there, helped us get the box shipped, and came on back. I don't think I would have ever experienced that in the U.S., honestly. So that kind of helpfulness and friendliness was something that was really evident in China. The people are really, really nice. So that's something I was impressed with immediately. Now, I will say one thing about them. I say they're nice. They don't stand in lines well. So, uh, if you're waiting in line for something, they'll be pushing in ahead of you. But that apparently isn't considered something bad in China, I guess. I don't know. But they do that. But another couple of examples, when we were in Chengdu, a city we'll get to in a little bit, my daughter starting to come down with a cold. And so the manager was saying how we're doing. She was mentioning that she's doing pretty well, but starting to get some cold. Well, okay, blah, blah. And he said there's a pharmacy nearby, etc. And a few minutes later, somebody brought her a cup of hot ginger tea and said, the manager said to bring you this. This should help your cold. So she did, and it was strong ginger tea, but it worked. Actually, it was very good for her cold. And then they offered to send down and get some medicine at the pharmacy for her, and she decided that she didn't need to. The ginger tea was working well enough, but just really accommodating. So we had some good experiences with the people. The other thing that I would say a little bit negative experience is the taxi system. You really have to get a meter taxi in Shanghai at least, because if you start trusting people to give you a good price, a lot of them will drive up and tell you that they'll take you to the hotel for such and such a price. It's usually going to be inflated. So, you start learning a few little things to watch there about stuff like that. But overall, the people are great. And so I really enjoyed the people of China while I was there. Well, let's keep moving. Now, we went there not for the people, not for the food, but we went there to see the show. We went there for business. We really did. And I spent 3 days at the show in China out of basically 8 days really in China, not counting the days we're flying back and forth. I worked at the show or visiting companies 4 of the days, traveled between cities 1 of the days, and did sightseeing for 3. So that's about how this worked out. But here we are waiting in line as people push their way in front of us to get into the CPHI show. We already had a list of companies with times when we would meet them, and we'd already purchased ingredients from 2 of the companies that were there. Well, actually, one of the companies that were exhibiting, and another one that just came over to meet us there. Some companies we'd met before at shows in the USA, actually. If you go to Supply Side West, I would say of the ingredient suppliers, probably 25 to 30% of them are from China. Even the U.S. shows now. And other companies also contacted us because they saw we were registered for the show. So we already had a list of people to meet when we got there. And here we'll just show some of the people that we met. This is Gen-A Biotech Company. Makes a lot of herbal extracts. Seems like a pretty good company, actually. I talked to them. And, I haven't really validated them as a supplier that I trust yet, but I've made contact, and I think that they have a lot of promise. So that's where we are with that particular company. The one on the right was kind of interesting. If you'll notice, between us, there's a piece of ceramic jar there with a snake coiled around it. One of the things they do, besides herbal extracts, is they extract cobra venom from that snake, from snakes like that, and then sell it. They say it's a painkiller. So, better get the dose right, I think. But and that's not the job I would want at a company, but still, I was pretty impressed that they're doing that. So. Interesting people, interesting folks. I think so. In fact, everybody here, I think, is that I put on here, I believe, are good product companies that make good products. The left-hand picture, that the girl on the left is Linda. She's a really, really nice person. I really enjoyed talking to her, actually. We had ordered one product from them before, and it's methylfolate, well, L5 tetrahydra methyl tetra, 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate from them, from her actually, and she sent it here. I don't think she's a manufacturer. In fact, the company that booth is there is not hers. It's some people that she works with, but she has contacts and does that. And I feel like she's a a good person. I would like to meet the company that makes the methylfolate that she gets sometime and work with her on that. But she was a great person. She came through when I was having a hard time getting that for our product. We actually ordered some from an American company who, of course, orders it from China. But for some reason, they were having trouble. They couldn't get through customs. And I was getting desperate, so I, started looking for companies and came up with her, and she was able to supply it. We got it in, it tested out just fine, and so that was a big relief. It turned out that the other material and what we got from her both came in the same day exactly. But anyway, I wasn't going to risk it any longer because it really was held up in customs for weeks. From the company we originally ordered it from. The company on the right is a company, I've met the girl on the left on that right-hand person out in Las Vegas at a supply side show before. So, they're a good company also. I think most of these I have not validated to the extent that I would like to. In fact, only one company in China that I really have. The company here, Hunan Health Guard, I really am impressed with them. They seem to be a great company, and I didn't know them before, but they do herbal extracts. They are a manufacturer, and they're one I really hope to visit sometime in China. These are ones that I just have been contacting. I tried to get them to ship me some sample to the Chengdu hotel before I left, but they weren't able to get it done quickly enough. They had to get it there. I was talking to them on a Thursday, and they were going back to their factory on Friday, and it had to be there in Chengdu Tuesday, and they couldn't seem to get that done that quickly. They said they were going to try to, but they didn't. But I don't know if they really stock that. What we were wanting is Shogal, and it's a pretty unusual, apparently, for most companies. They were one of only 2 companies there that made Shogal that I could find in the whole show. And most of the people I asked them that they make ginger extracts, I asked them about Shogal, and they said, "What's that?" It says, "Chinese ginger has gingerols. Doesn't have Shogal." Well, I don't know what Shogal is. So I was, trying to swim upstream, so to speak, on that issue. But Shogal is an interesting compound in ginger. Not in ginger, but formed from ginger, I think. So that's something that we'll be looking at down the road, making. But it's turning out to be a little bit more challenging than I realized to get it. I thought, well, I'd go to this show and everybody would have it. And most of them didn't know what it was. So that's okay. They, they, um, they have a warehouse or 2 in the United States as well as there. So I feel like it was a good contact. And there's a lot more of them that I'm not showing today. This company is they were the first company to manufacture NMN, which is nicotinamide mononucleotide. That's an interesting compound that I haven't quite decided if I want to use or not. I'm sort of leaning in that direction, but I'm with niacin activated. Well, when you think about activated, niacinamide is a little bit more so than niacin. It's a little bit closer to what you want, but still not really what I would consider an activated niacin. Nicotinamide riboside is getting closer, um, and is become quite popular in the United States and elsewhere. But it's still not as active as nicotinamide mononucleotide. Of course, that's made into NAD, nicotinamide dinucleotide, so in the body. So I'm trying to decide, this is about half the size of the NAD molecule. And what I'm not quite sure about yet is, does the human body absorb this intact from the gut? And I'm still uncertain and still trying to, I haven't quite found the right studies yet to convince me on it. So I'm looking at that. But this is something I'm really interested in, because if it works, it would be a fantastic supplement for a lot of people. Well, that's all for this show right now. I also had one vendor that I'm really doing a significant amount of business with for some astragalus extracts. A very highly specialized company in Chengdu, and we set out to visit them. Now, if you look at the map on the left there, see the far left arrow, red arrow there, is pointing to Chengdu in central China, and we were in Shanghai, where the red arrow on the right is. So we were traveling about halfway across China to go to visit these people. So I decided that I wanted to do it by high-speed rail, because I wanted to see what's in between. I didn't want to just fly over it. I wanted to see China, not just two big cities. So that's what we did. It turned out to be a 12-hour train ride from Shanghai to Chengdu. It's a little over 1,000 miles, but that train travels between 200 and 250 miles per hour. Of course, it makes stops along the way too, at some of the cities. So it's not quite like, if you flew an airplane at that speed, you get there a lot quicker than that. But very high-speed rail, something I really wish we had in this country, because I like traveling with them. But nevertheless, it's a very fast, very nice modern rail system. And I'll show you some of the scenery. Saw farms on the way, a lot of agriculture. I don't know what these people are growing on the left here, but it's lots of greenhouses and open farmland both there. I did see lots of corn, which I was surprised at. I didn't realize that they grew so much corn in China. I thought everything would be rice. I saw more cornfields than I saw rice fields, I think, in China, which I'm not quite sure why, but that surprised me. But anyway, it may just be where I was traveling. And you see cities, small cities, but pretty modern on the way. A lot of nice scenery. On the left here, a really picturesque little village. Well, not real little, but a town there. Beautiful gorge there with the rocky cliffs and mountains above the river. And so it was a nice train ride. I enjoyed that. The main thing is, that's where I couldn't find vegetarian food. The choices on the train for food, vegetarian, unless you want peanuts or cashews or some potato chips, something like that. Actually, food they served, none of it was vegetarian. So that part of it. If you're traveling, just keep that in mind. You better bring your food with you on the train. But where we're going was Chengdu. Everybody knows this, that knows Chengdu, knows this, and China and the world. That's where the pandas are found. Also, the red pandas live there, the small ones. It's an older city, a lot of traditional type uh, buildings, but modern too. Temples, in this case, a Buddhist temple. Uh, Very beautiful. Uh, you see on the right-hand picture, though, Sichuan Science and Technology Museum. I really wanted to go to that, but I had too many other things I really wanted to do. Go to that museum. Uh, Chairman Mao waving at everybody. Uh, he's pretty prominent in China still. That's changed. Sichuan food, you can look at the left-hand picture. There's a hot pot there. The left-hand one is vegetarian. The right-hand one is not. It's a divided bowl that they made it in. Sichuan food is spicy, to say the least. Probably the hottest food in the world. Uh, it's usually rated up near the very top. So if you don't like spicy, uh, be you may not want to go to that Sichuan area because it's pretty ubiquitous there. The spicy food is. This is Chang King Tiger people, and that's why we to um, went to Chengdu, was to meet with them. This is at their research center. I was kind of disappointed. I thought their factory was located there too, but their factory is actually about another 1,000 miles away. So we didn't manage to go to the factory, but this is a research and center, research and development center, and where they do most of their marketing and sales and shipping and stuff like that. They're a good company. They make highly isolated else. They only deal with that one herb. That's their entire business. The only company in China that I saw really just dealt with one ingredient like that. But they make these highly pure compounds from astragalus. Cycloastrolol and astragalus 4 are the ones that we get from them. They make also astragalus saponins and some other things. They're a very good company. They supply scientific chemical suppliers with standards for those chemicals. That's the source for standards if you're buying them from, Spectrum Chemical or Sigma Chemical, whoever. They're probably getting their standards from this company. They're very good. They have very good quality control. We went all through that with them. We've got a lot of documentation from them on that. So this is the one company I feel the strongest about. That I really can have a lot of confidence in. Right now they're in the process of building a new factory, an even more modern factory. And right behind that, their new product is to start growing their own astragalus. They're wanting to build a large plantation in Mongolia, I think they said, where they're going to put it, to grow their own astragalus. So they'll have control all the way through the entire process, from growing the plant to the purification of the so these are pretty impressive people. Now, said all of that, a couple of things in buying products from China. Well, yes and no. I don't feel totally confident buying products anywhere. You have to work and keep working to make sure that what you're getting is the right thing. Even people with good intentions don't always have the right thing. So you do have to be careful about what you buy and who you buy from. It was just a very beginning of trying to qualify suppliers in China. Actually, I'm on some things. I'll always buy from people in the U.S. that buy from China too. On some things, I'm sure. On the other hand, when I can actually make contacts in China, making it their products and every a lot of the Americans will buy from one company, 1 month, and then they'll buy from another company the next month. Consistent, the same company and the same product. Uh, the people at King Tiger sell to ingredients online, for instance, and some of the other people who sell herbal extracts. Uh, and, but we can't say that, those people might get it from a different supplier next time. A lot of times they'll make their own C of A when they can, a lot based on the C of A they get from copying it over. But at any rate, we can have a lot more confidence in the products as we develop these with the people who are doing the actual products in China. So that's one of the things that I'm striving to do. This is the first company that I really feel that I know well. That's outside their office there, and this is a complex that they're in on the right with about 200 biotech companies all in that one big area. It's one of the role for nutraceuticals. Of other being in the south, I think they get more of the sort of semi-tropical growing there. Things like the ginseng grow there, where it probably wouldn't area very well. Xi'an area seems to be a spot for a lot of these companies too. So several. As it turns out, I go to at least. When I'm in Korea, it'll be an easy thing if I need to visit a company. Over, it's only a 2-hour flight from Korea to a lot of these places in China. So I could literally fly over and just spend one night or even no nights and visit companies from Korea. So it'll be, this was a fairly expensive trip this time, but I can do it a lot cheaper. I can do it quite easily if I have to work with these people. And I would like to visit some of them because, especially the ones in Hunan and Xi'an, there's some there that I want to visit. Now, having said that, I will say some things about the industry in general. I don't like being that dependent on any one country. We'll always do business with China. I really hate that we've lost so much industry in this country. We used to have textile area. This area was bustling with textile mills and furniture making when I was young, and they're both pretty well gone now. Just few stragglers left, but not much. But that used to be what drove the economy of North Carolina. Well, that and those three things. And it's pretty well gone. Cities like up north, like Detroit, have become ghosts almost because so much industry is left. So we need to start looking at what we're doing and how do we compete. And it's not easy. It would be nice if we could supply China with a few things, but they make it really difficult. And I won't say that, I love the people of China, but the trade policies of China, I don't like, to be honest. They make it extremely difficult. Company that I visited there that, actually I knew the person in the booth, had been trying to open up China to sell ingredients to Chinese, and they'd had booths there for the last 3 years, but weren't able to sell products. They were just there for information, having their foot in the door. They've been working, they sell nutraceutical and food ingredients. They've been working for 3 years and still didn't have a single product that they could sell in China. And they are there and have Chinese people working. So they just are getting approved right now, and they're actually for somebody a little bit more with them on marketing in China. Or food ingredients that are conventional foods. They still can't sell nutraceutical type ingredients after 3 years, but if it's something that's a food flavoring or a food coloring agent or something like that, perhaps food preservative and conventional foods, they can sell that now, starting I think next month. So, but you know, these kind of ingredients, China wants to send them to us. They don't have to get them. They just send them and they come. A whole different. It does make it difficult intentionally. They support their industry a lot in the last few years. But this King Tiger company was started with a big grant from the government, and they built a big modern company off of it. The government is taking a lot that they're getting now and reinvesting it in China. You know, some countries, the leaders get from it. They're not doing that in China. They are reinvesting. They're building the high-speed rails. They're building infrastructure. They're giving companies startup money, none of which we do. A lot of things very well. They also are very and don't like to let things in to compete. So as much as I love China, I have to agree with the, you know, getting tough with China on trade policy too, because, you know, trade needs to be a two-way street. And right now it's all mostly a one-way street with China. So I applaud the government's effort to open up China a little bit more. Hopefully succeed. But we'll see. At any rate, we also need to do a better job of competing anyway, we need to get back into manufacturing in this and make it work here, at least for people, if we don't export to other people. But bottom line is, I feel very comfortable, a lot more than I did before I went, because I know that I can develop there if I can identify them and verify that they're good. The future we'll always do trade with China, and hopefully they'll do more with us. But I do feel comfortable being able to tell people we can supply you with good quality dietary supplements with ingredients we get from China. And that's been a concern of customers over the years, people calling in and asking about that. But I feel that I can really give them a lot more assurance than I could before the trip that we can make good quality products with Chinese ingredients, and we will be, and are continuing to. And I thank you, and if you have questions about this, you're welcome to give me a call. And so until next month, have a great summer, and we'll talk again next month. Next month will be a more conventional talk, probably about probiotics. So goodbye, and have a wonderful evening.